Good morning from Klagenfurt, from Carinthia. This is Günther Fellinger from Pax Europiana here at the most important site here in our most southern town in Austria, and it's very close to Slovenia. Slovenia is in Nato. Austria and Carinthia should be as well. And I will make you a small tour now in the beginning of Klagenfurt. Of Carinthia I cannot do all of it, but Klagenfurt here at the site and calling for NATO membership. I was yesterday in the Salzburger Nachrichten. That was very good start for this tour where I go to Salzburg and to Carinthia. I will be back to Vienna tonight, and I will tell you the story of the Carinthian independence struggle in 1990. After the end of the World War, Austria and Hungarian monarchy was broken up, and the question, there was a new state developed, of course, what turned into Yugoslavia on the 1st of December 1918, and the question is, where will be the borders? And this vexed question was, of course, very dramatic at that time, and it led to a 2 years struggle politically, international, diplomatically and militarily. It is the Carinthian freedom and liberation struggle of 1920, and I will show you here. This is, by the way, the municipality of Klagenfurt. I hope the social media team will follow my tweets, and I'm calling today, of course, for NATO membership of Austria. And here in these areas of Austria where there is this complicated history, especially Tyrol, the division of the First World War, but as well in Burgenland. I will tell you that story as well. But as well, I will now focus on Carinthia, because Carinthia was divided ultimately. And the question is how far it will be divided. Yeah? The areas between Carinthia and Slovenia, there was no clear boundary in any sense for centuries. Yeah? And I was myself in the 1990s, when Slovenia became free. I was a student leader. I went there. And you cannot, I was making a seminar for the Slovenian Student Association, our partner organization. There was only the language dividing us. The rest, they looked, they acted. You know, when you do a seminar for 2 days, you meet the people, you talk, you see how they interact. The Slovenians are so close to us, and we're so close to the Slovenians in many respects. And because simply for many centuries, there was no border. And then the question, of course, how far north should Yugoslavia, what turned into Yugoslavia, the kingdom of the Slovenian, Croatians and Serbs, how far north it should extend, was a very vexed and complicated one. It was complicated, and for 2 years it was very contentious. And it was then settled with international arbitration, with commissions, with boundary commissions, and ultimately by the freedom struggle and the referendums on the 10th of October 1920. This is now the federal government of the region of Carinthia. It's, by the way, our poorest region. It's still a border region. Still a lot can be done and must be done. And what is absolutely needed, first of all, is to have NATO membership of Austria, to be united, no longer have a military border here in a sense. We have overcome a lot in the EU, of course, but much needs to be done, and it will be done. And the most important is, of course, to overcome the ethnic divisions, and much has been achieved also by Mr. van der Bellen and Mr. Bohur, the Slovenian president, but much needs to be done still in the future. I'm now at the central monument. That's the monument of unity of Carinthia, Kärntner Einheit, freedom, encounter, unity, peace. And what more relevant position there could be. 1918 to 1920, that is the monument here of the freedom struggle. And here is the timeline of the freedom struggle, the Carinthian freedom struggle, and then leading to the referendum. Of course, the armistice first, and then the question of the occupation of the Yugoslavian troops. I remember, all the listeners of my podcast remember, Serbia was the only real army. The Austrian-Hungarian army was dissolving. There was the Italian army, there was no longer Austrian-Hungarian army, there was the Serbian army. So this army then took the Austrian territories of Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, and the people there had really very little choice because there was no Austrian choice anymore. There was Italian choice or Serbian choice. They chose the Serbian choice because of the Italian racism and the clear disaster that would be their destiny living under Italy. And they were fighting for years against that, and so they didn't want that. So then you have here 1918, of course, the preliminary border commissions, and then the armistice between Carinthia and Slovenia as regional governments, and then you had the opening of the peace conference, and then an American commission, Sherman Miles. They have come to Carinthia to do the border demarcation. Then there were further fights. And then there was a basic agreement about the referendum about the determination of the borders. And then there was the Yugoslavian army was occupying Klagenfurt, this village, this city, not village, this regional capital. And then there was the boundaries were in the different zones. And then there was massive propaganda and fake news activity. And then at the 10th and October 1920, there was the referendum, and there was the international control then under this referendum. And 59.4% of the population have opted for Austria, and that's why Carinthia stayed in Austria under international support. And 41% were for the annexation of Yugoslavia. And so this is the history. And of course, now 100 years later, we have overcome all the divisions and the problems, and most of them at least. And now there is peace here, obviously, because we are in the EU. But just one small country has not got the news and is still not in Nato, while Nato is the powerful force of European unity and of European security, and it always backed our unity. And it has also been America at that time already bringing justice to the situation of a complicated division, which actually America wanted, and it was the just punishment for starting the First World War. And by the way, the same should apply for Russia. They started that war, they should be dismantled, and there will be a lot of such commissions necessary, referendums. So learning from history is very relevant for the dismantling of Russia, which I'm also advocating. And I hope it will come as a punishment for the terrible war of horror and which they are doing against Ukraine, which should be also in NATO and in the EU. And I call the Slovenians here from this point, please vote for the Nato referendum, no, not referendum, public petition. I call all the Carinthian Slovenians, do that, please sign, and please support Austria's NATO accession. We have a new president now in Slovenia, and hope he is very positive towards unity of Austria and Slovenia in the same defense alliance. Something we should have done 30 years ago. We missed it. Slovenia is in since 2004. Now it's time for all of us to be united in NATO. Thanks a lot here from Klagenfurt, and more to come. And please support the unity of Europe in the beautiful alliance of the free world called NATO. Thanks a lot. Bye.